darkness, truths unravel. Welcome to Darkroom Narratives, where every story leaves a shadow.
Some stories are buried for a reason. This one was never meant to be found. The Curse Beneath the Andes, a Darkroom Narratives original.
The village of San Ignacio de los Andes clung to the edge of the Peruvian mountains like a secret. Stone houses leaned into one another, their red tile roofs weathered by decades of sun, wind, and stories. Most travelers passed through without stopping, but four strangers had come not to pass through, but to disappear into the highlands. Dr. Lina Torres stepped off the rusted bus first. She wore boots caked with dust from other countries, a satchel of notebooks and field tools slung across her shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight braid, and her eyes moved like someone always expecting to be lied to. Lina wasn't here for discovery. She was here for proof. Proof that the Corazon de la Montaña existed, the heart of the mountain. David Kane followed close behind, a professor of anthropology, but more than that, a man chasing meaning. He wore round glasses and a worn leather jacket that smelled of old books and rain. In his hand, he carried a tattered codex, one passed down by a shaman he once met in Colombia, full of strange glyphs and warnings. David didn't believe in curses, but he respected the fear that others did. Next was Eric Morrow, dragging a rolling camera case over the cobblestone. Eric had worked on survival shows, war documentaries, and low-budget horror films. To him, this was just another job, except it paid better and came with mystery. He already imagined the YouTube thumbnails and Netflix pitches. Last came Mateo, silent, lean, weathered, a Quechua man from a neighboring region who had agreed to guide them. No one in San Ignacio would take the group. Locals crossed themselves at the mention of the mountain. Mateo had simply said, "I know the way," and nothing more. They met at the edge of the plaza. Lina laid out the map she'd pieced together from museums and monasteries. The path wound through jungle, up past forgotten terraces, and into the cloud forest. No one has reached the temple since the 1800s, she said. Because they don't come back, an old man muttered nearby, not looking up from his chessboard. Lina didn't flinch. That's why we'll document everything. Eric nodded. Cameras don't lie. David gave a half smile. But the mountain does. The journey began at sunrise. They followed a narrow trail out of the village, past rows of maize and coca shrubs, up into mist and stone. The air grew thinner with each step. Birds fell silent. Trees twisted oddly toward the sky, as if listening. By midday, they reached a ridge. Below them, a gorge swallowed in clouds. Mateo stood at the edge, staring for a long time. "The spirits here remember," he said, and walked on. Lina began recording everything in her field journal. 1322, ridge above cloud forest. Strange silence. Trees appear burned in patterns. No birds since morning. Mateo remains calm. Eric flew a drone. It buzzed above them like a fly. He squinted at the monitor. "Guys, there's a shape in the forest. Big. Like a dome." The signal cut off. Static. They pressed on. That night, they made camp beneath crooked trees. The fire was small, flickering like it feared the dark. David told stories, not of ancient gods, but of men who disappeared chasing them. Lina turned on her recorder. 2241, first night on trail. Wind constant. Mateo not sleeping. Keeps looking into trees. Claims to hear whispering. The next morning, she played back the recording. Over her own voice, a second voice whispered in Quechua, one no one remembered speaking. The second day began with mist so thick it blurred the line between earth and sky. The forest here breathed. You could feel it. Every step into the cloud canopy was muffled by moss and leaves, the air heavy with moisture and the scent of wet stone. Lena walked ahead, scanning for markings along the trees, signs carved by the old priests, if the legends were true. Her fingers trailed bark, pausing on unfamiliar symbols. She noted them with the calm of someone who's seen too much to be surprised. David was quiet, for once. He stared into the twisted forest, muttering to himself occasionally in broken Quechua. His journal was already half full of sketches and references. This place, he whispered, was never meant to be mapped. Eric complained about the moisture ruining his lenses, but he filmed anyway. The footage was gold. The eerie fog, the looming trees, the way Mateo kept glancing over his shoulder. Because Mateo had grown nervous, he said little, but his eyes darted too often toward the tree line. Twice, he stopped and muttered prayers under his breath, staring at nothing in particular. Lena asked, "What is it?" He hesitated. "The trees are not in the same place as yesterday." David chuckled. "What, they moved?" Mateo didn't smile. They pressed on. By midday, they reached a stone wall, ancient, moss-covered, carved with spirals and jaguars. It wasn't on any map Lena had reconstructed. She knelt to brush away vines, revealing a narrow archway barely taller than a person. "This wasn't built for people," David said. "Too small. Or meant to keep something out," Lena countered. Mateo refused to enter. "This is wrong," he said firmly. "This place is not part of the path." Lena ignored him and led the way inside. The tunnel was tight, walls damp and close. Their flashlights caught glints of metal, old tools, coins, even bones. Air was thin and cold. Eric's camera caught strange flickers, lens flares where there was no light, static sounds on playback. At the far end of the tunnel, they emerged into a hollowed basin surrounded by thick jungle. In the center stood a solitary stone monolith, covered in glyphs no one could translate. Lena's voice trembled. "We found it," David murmured, "or it found us." They camped there for the night, despite Mateo's protests. That night, something circled the basin. Footsteps in the underbrush, low whistles that mimicked their voices. Eric stayed up to film, but caught only darkness and the sound of breathing near his tent. In the morning, he didn't speak much, just played back audio with a pale face, and among the static, a low voice whispering his name. Morning in the basin was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no insects. Even the wind had vanished. Lena stared at the monolith while sipping cold coffee. "This is it," she said. "It's guarding something. Or hiding it." David had spent the night translating glyphs by flashlight. Some of these match symbols from the Temple of the Condor. But others, he hesitated, they're older than Inca. Pre-solar cults, maybe. Mateo refused to eat. He sat apart from the group, whispering prayers in Quechua and pressing a small carved totem to his chest. Eric kept filming. He'd slept maybe 2 hours, but was high on adrenaline and paranoia. His footage now included strange sounds, like flutes and drums, always just beneath the threshold. Mid-morning, they began exploring the basin. Lena noticed carved channels in the ground, forming patterns that resembled constellations. "This entire space might be a map," she said. David traced a path from the monolith to the far side of the clearing. There, beneath vines and roots, they found a flat stone door, circular, embedded in the earth. It took all 4 of them to uncover it. "It's sealed," David said, brushing his fingers across its edges. "And there's something behind it." Mateo finally spoke. "It is called Kase Punku, the living door. It only opens when it wants to." They argued for hours. Lena wanted it open. David wasn't sure. Eric wanted to blow it up, joking, but not really. Mateo insisted they leave. Then, around dusk, the wind returned. It carried with it a low, rhythmic hum, not mechanical, not wind. Something else. The monolith began to vibrate. Not visibly, but they felt it through their feet. Lena placed her hand on the stone and gasped. It's resonating, like a tuning fork, or like it's listening. Suddenly, the glyphs lit up, not brightly, just enough to shimmer like moonlight on water. Eric scrambled for his camera. Mateo fled into the trees. Then the door clicked, not swung open, not exploded, just clicked, and shifted half an inch. The group froze. Lena whispered, "That wasn't us." David crouched beside it, staring into the hairline crack. "There's movement, like light, like breathing." Lena looked around. "Where's Mateo?" No one knew. Eric muttered, "He's not coming back." They waited until dark, but Mateo never returned. Eventually, they made camp again, nervous and restless. No fire this time. Lena thought it best to stay hidden. That night, each of them dreamed the same thing, standing alone before the monolith, being asked a question, but in a language they couldn't understand. Yet somehow they all answered. In the morning, they said nothing to each other. Lena approached the door alone. Her fingers hovered near the crack. David stopped her. "We don't know what's in there." "We came for truth," she said. "Truth doesn't wait." Eric was already filming. She pressed. The stone shifted, slowly, groaning like it hadn't moved in centuries. Cold air escaped, heavy with dust and something sweeter, decay, but older than rot. Darkness waited below. They looked at each other, then descended. The entrance sloped downward into the earth, steep, narrow, and slick with moisture. Their flashlights barely cut through the dark. Stone walls closed in tight, etched with symbols no one could read. The air was damp, metallic, and oddly sweet, like orchids left too long in the sun. Lena led, recorder in hand. "If this is a tomb," she whispered, "it's unlike anything we've cataloged before." David followed closely, eyes wide. "The architecture's wrong. This predates Andean masonry. Some of it looks melted." Eric, behind them, muttered, "You feel that? Like we're being pulled downward." The tunnel bent left, then dropped into a spiral. They descended in silence, the only sound their breath echoing back unnaturally, as if the walls were breathing with them. Suddenly, they emerged into a vast chamber. A dome of polished stone arched high above them, impossibly smooth. In the center, a stone altar rose from the floor, surrounded by glyphs carved in perfect circles. Lena stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed a faint boundary in the dust, the walls vibrated, gently, rhythmically, like the low beat of a heart. David gasped. "This whole place, it's alive." Eric panned his camera slowly across the chamber. "Guys, look at the shadows. They're moving." They were, not dancing with the flashlight, moving on their own. Small, slithering movements at the edge of vision. "Gone if you stared." Lena whispered, "Stay calm." "There, residual. Memory echoes." David turned to her. "You've seen this before?" She hesitated. "No, but something tells me it's not malevolent." They approached the altar. It held a single object, a black stone orb, etched with silver veins that pulsed faintly. It emitted a low hum, not heard, but felt, in bones, in teeth, in memory. David stepped forward, mesmerized. "It's beautiful." Lena reached out, but froze. Behind them, the tunnel began to seal. Stone, slow and silent, slid into place. They were trapped. Eric backed up, filming wildly. "Nope. Nope. This isn't right." Lena stayed still. "This was always going to happen." "David, what do you mean?" She turned to them. "We weren't just meant to find this. We were invited." Eric started pacing, breath quickening. "This is how people vanish. This is how stories end." David stared at the orb. "What if this is the heart?" El Corazón de la Montaña. Lena nodded. And what if it wants something? Silence. Then, a whisper. None of them spoke, yet they heard it, like a voice underwater, speaking inside their heads. Mateo's voice. He was singing. Soft. Low. A Quechua lullaby. Eric whispered, "He's here." Lena's eyes welled. Or what he left behind us. The orb pulsed stronger. Then something began rising behind the altar, a shape forming from mist and shadow. Not a person, not a creature, a presence. No eyes, no limbs, just recognition. It saw them. The morning after the shrine discovery, the group's mood was taut, not with excitement, but unease. The jungle around them had changed. The air was heavier, the light somehow dimmer, as if the trees were closing in to watch. Lena was the first to speak after hours of silent hiking. That inscription, it was a warning, not a dedication. David frowned. I translated it correctly. You did, but you missed the intent. Mateo, walking a few steps ahead, muttered something in Quechua. No one asked what it meant. They continued upward, their trail narrowing into a jagged ledge with a drop so sheer, one misstep would mean death. Eric, usually full of sarcastic bravado, was silent, his grip on the camera trembling. At the top, the path opened into a flat, barren plateau. In its center stood a carved stone arch, blackened by age, half buried in tangled moss. "This is it," David whispered. "The Gate of Silence." Before anyone could object, Lena stepped forward, brushing vines aside and placing her palm on the stone. It was warm, unnaturally so. Her eyes widened. "I think it's humming." Suddenly, the wind died. Every bird call, every insect's buzz, gone. A blanket of silence fell over the plateau. Then a low vibration, barely audible, began to resonate from the arch. Mateo stepped back. "This is not our place," he said. Lena didn't move. Her fingers traced symbols on the arch's surface, a glint of obsession flickering in her gaze. "We came this far. I have to know." Without warning, the ground beneath them rumbled. Cracks split through the stone base, and a rush of warm air burst from the arch. Eric stumbled backward, catching something on camera, a flicker, a shadow darting across the frame. Then it was over. The wind returned. The insects buzzed again, but everything felt wrong. That night at camp, no one spoke much. Even the fire seemed reluctant to burn. David sat apart, scribbling furiously in his journal. Mateo whispered prayers over carved stones laid around the tent. Lena stared into the dark jungle. "I saw something in there," she said finally. It wasn't a shadow. Eric played back the footage. The moment of the air burst, and something moving. Human-shaped. Quick. Unnatural. "Maybe it's a trick of the light," he offered weakly. "No," Lena said. "It was watching us. And it didn't blink." As they stepped into the final chamber, the air felt colder, not from the mountain, but from something else. The walls pulsed faintly with a reddish glow. In the center of the room stood an altar carved from obsidian, and on it, a stone box sealed with gold bands and ancient script. Lena moved first. Her breath came in sharp gasps, not from exertion, but from awe. "This is it," she whispered. "The Corazón de la Montaña." David approached slowly, eyes wide with hunger. He reached out, but Mateo stopped him. "Do not touch it," the guide said. His voice trembled. "This place, it breathes." The camera light flickered. Eric tapped it, frowning. "Guys, do you hear that?" They all paused. A low hum vibrated through the floor, growing louder. The gold bands on the box began to shimmer. Then a whisper, not one voice, but many, layered and old, echoed through the room. Lena stepped back, raising her hands. "It's a warning." Too late. David had touched the box. With a roar like shifting stone, the walls lit up with ancient symbols. Wind howled from nowhere. Shadows rose from the edges of the chamber, humanoid, featureless, yet filled with anguish. They circled David, who screamed, backing into the altar. Mateo grabbed Lena's arm. "We must go." Eric dropped the camera, frozen in place. A voice, his own voice, whispered from the dark, "You came for power. You leave with memory." Lena and Mateo pulled him away. Behind them, David's cries faded and the altar dimmed. Silence fell. They ran. The tunnel behind them shuddered. Stones crashed down, cutting off the chamber. The mountain sealed itself, as if swallowing the past. They emerged into the pale morning light, gasping, filthy, changed. No one spoke for hours. When they reached the village days later, no one asked where David was. No one needed to. Lena's journal entry that night was short. "We found it. We survived." But something followed. Eric uploaded only one clip to the cloud, a silent image of the glowing box. It vanished from the platform the next day. Mateo returned to the mountains alone. Lena left archaeology, and Eric stopped filming. But the mountain remembered. Always.
If you're still here, it means the shadows didn't scare you away. Subscribe to Darkroom Narratives for more stories that linger long after the lights go out.